up a dive. Feel the vibe, get ready to ignite. Untold stories in the airwaves, flying through the night. Experience voices, tales so bold. Streaming live, the truth unfolds. Untold Radio Network, where secrets come alive. New episodes daily, the mysteries thrive. Great guests, super chat, so I remember right. Share and subscribe. Join the side where truth can't hide. Aliens in the attic, UFOs in the sky. Cryptids lurking, oh my, oh my. Ghosts in the hallway, whispering your name. The paranormal, the unexplained. Become a VIP, get the inside scoop. Unlock the mysteries, be part of the group. Live streaming stories, they're talking to you. Super chats buzzing, join the crew. Untold Radio Network, where secrets come alive. New episodes daily, the mysteries thrive. Great guests, super chat, it's a wild member ride. Share and subscribe, join the side where truth can hide. So if you've got the guts and you want to explore, tune into the Untold, it's what you're looking for. From aliens to ghosts and all that's unseen. Untold Radio Network, where the world's mysteries convene.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Paranormal Spectrum right here on the Untold Radio Network. I am your host, Barnaby Jones. Today's episode is pre-recorded, just to let everybody know right off the bat. So if we're ignoring your comments or questions in the comments section, please don't worry about that. We are not ignoring you. We are just pre-recorded on today's show. We have an awesome guest with me today. I have spoken with him before. I have been at a conference with him. He is an author of 6 books about the Sasquatch species, including Sasquatch and Autism, Next of Kin Next Door, Our Life with Bigfoot, Mindspeak, and the novel The Girl Who Spoke with Giants. Most recently, Christopher has released a full-length documentary on how to see a Sasquatch, which covers his 13 years in the field research in northern Vermont. But even more recently than that, he has a brand new book out, and we're going to talk with him in just a second. All right, guys, please welcome to the show my guest today, Mr. Christopher Noël. Welcome to the show, man.
Hey, Barnaby, it's wonderful to be here. It's a privilege and a pleasure.
Oh, definitely, man. It's good to see you again. It's good to hear from you. It's been, we're pre-recording this. It's been about a year since we actually got to hang out in person at the Marinette Menominee Bigfoot and Paranormal Convention. And
yeah, I think it's more than that, wasn't it? March? It was like 14 months ago or so.
No, it was literally actually from
May?
recording this, it would be this coming weekend a year ago.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Well, this is starting off.
June.
That's a very rocky start. Okay.
That
Start
is all
over.
right. That is all right.
All right. Okay.
So
No. So
what?
go ahead.
Okay. This
Oh, man.
we'll get through this. It's all right. We'll do it together. You started out doing Bigfoot research. You put out all these books on all of that. And a year ago, when we had you at the conference, you were talking about the paranormal and Bigfoot. And now you have a brand new book talking about UFOs, UAPs, the afterlife, and all the stuff that goes with that. So how did we transition from Bigfoot to all of this, man? Where are we going?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think of it not so much transitioning as expanding and including more of the kindred phenomena that take place outside of our ordinary reality frame. I think in terms of vibrational levels, and we're down here on Earth in a very dense plane. And when people have near-death experiences, they often describe feeling like they're turning into light. They're becoming made of a finer substance and transcending this dense realm. And when those who live through it, and come to tell us, they all come back into their body, and they describe how excruciating it is to go from a sense of expansion and vastness down to being bottled back up in their confining, super painful physical form again, and how much more what's the word, rarefied and open and wonderful it is on the other side. So similarly, when people are abducted by aliens, they describe often being just floated up in the air, feeling like their cells are sort of parting and letting in more space, more light. They'll be floated right through the ceiling or the roof of the car or through their window, and they wouldn't be able to do that. And I feel that in many cases, this is literally what happens, not just taking their consciousness out, but their physical body becomes much more permeable, much more rarefied, and they can go through matter, what we consider ordinary matter in the everyday world. They wouldn't be able to do that unless their physical body actually became much less dense. I mean, you'd have to be a tremendous amount less dense to go through a wall or a ceiling. And I think that UAPs in general and the aliens, various aliens that we call aliens, which I think are rooted in the Earth, which we can get into, not from Alpha Centauri or the Galactic Federation. So I part ways with a lot of people on that, and we can go into that. But I think that they are vibrational neighbors of our spirits. I don't think they're the same as our spirits. They're not our dead, and I don't think they can go all the way to the afterlife that we transcend to when we die. I think they exist somewhere in the middle, in a sort of a kind of a sort of a purgatory kind of thing. Because otherwise, why would they? If they could transcend to the ecstasy that awaits all of us, I believe, then why would they keep boomeranging back and forth between disappearing in low density form and then densifying where we can see them back on Earth, and they messing around with us and being seen, being photographed, but never videotaped, but never quite fully manifesting themselves for 100% verification for science. They exist in this liminal, threshold realm, and I think that they can't stay here, nor can they transcend all the way to heaven, whatever you want to call that. I think they're alienated from both. So the aliens are alienated, you could say, if you wanted to be overly clever like that. And so that's some of what I think, but I'll let you get a word in edgewise.
Absolutely. So yeah, it makes
all this.
It does make sense. If every matter on Earth is made up of particles and everything vibrates at a certain frequency, so I'm vibrating at a certain frequency, this desk is vibrating at a certain frequency. If you can match the density and the vibration of certain objects, you can pass through them because nothing is solid. It's all just tiny little particles that are close together by these little tiny bonds. And if you can manipulate that bond and stuff, you could pass through things. I mean, that's legitimate science. How to do it, we don't have any idea. But
We don't know.
it's possible that these beings that we're talking about today have that technology, have that ability.
Yeah, if you match the vibration of a wall, say, or a glass, or especially if you go a higher frequency than that, then you can pass through it readily. This guy Frederick Myers, who's one of the founders of parapsychology, after he died, he spoke through a famous medium named Geraldine Cummins, and he said the afterlife is so rarefied that it is invisible to the mortal eye and eludes the finest instruments of the scientists. It is of the material universe. So I often argue against those against dualism, where there's matter and then there's non-matter. I think everything is a spectrum of different frequencies of matter. Down here, very, very dense, and up there increasingly rarefied as we go farther and farther up the scale of what do you want to call it, enlightenment or purification. And I also don't agree with the UFO UAP commentators and researchers often talk about multi-dimensions. And when you talk about a different dimension with spirits, ghosts, or UAPs, any of these phenomena that are outside of our ordinary reality frame, I don't think it makes sense to talk about a completely different a different kind of existence, a different realm. I think it's all part of the same realm. I think the universe is one thing, and it just takes different manifestations. So, like when a ghost appears, very often it gradually appears and then gradually disappears. It's a smooth transition rather than stepping through some sort of objective barrier. I don't think there is a concrete sort of necessary barrier. I think it's a state of mind where some people are able to see spirits all the time, like our friend Angela Zabel, whom I met with you when I was at your conference last year in June, and
Very
she
good.
has helped me. Yes, she has helped me to understand that that it's not that we're all in the same place. It's just we're at different registers, like different spots on the radio dial, but infinitely more complex than a radio dial. And those spirits who have the talent or the gift to modulate their frequency are more able to manifest here, where we can perceive them with these sort of rudimentary senses that we're given. Some kids can see dead people, and then they lose that ability, or they have it drummed out of them. Some adults can go on seeing spirits of the transitioned all their life. Angela can, and that's because there is no real veil. There's the veil that we impose upon ourselves by our own limitations. So in the same way, I don't think there are different dimensions. I think that I don't want to be repetitive here, but I think we're all in the same place. We're all in the same boat. It's just a very complicated boat, a very large boat with different. You can't keep up with the maritime metaphor, but it just has a lot of different types of places. But it's a boat with no walls. That's a silly kind of metaphor, but it. Anyway, well, go ahead.
So let's dig down into this then. So, do you think that these, I guess for lack of a better word, the entities or the spirits that we're able to see, do you think that they're changing their vibrational level to come into our visual spectrum? Or do you think that the person is able to, like I would be able to change my vibrational level to see them for that brief moment? What do you think is happening there?
Well, sometimes it's one, sometimes it's we meet in the middle someplace. Sometimes just ordinary people who don't have any particular gift will once or twice in their life see a spirit, because that spirit is capable of modulating its frequency enough to appear before even an ordinary person who doesn't have any particular psychic gifts. But then there are those who have psychic gifts who kind of raise their vibration and
All right,
yeah. So sometimes it's a collaborate. We're back. Are we?
Yep, we're good. Yep.
Yeah. Sometimes it's a collaboration, between a spirit, because we're spirits too. You and I are spirits. In fact, in a way, we're already in the afterlife, because we're no less spirit now than we're going to be after our body sloughs off. So sometimes it's a collaboration of spirits, one embodied and one no longer, imprisoned in a body, and they can find the same level. And sometimes people who are still incarnate can go out of body. You know this. Most of our listeners or viewers will know this, and go out of body, and they can go visit the departed and freak them out. There's a story in Robert Monroe's book, Journeys Out of the Body, his famous 1972 book, where he eventually is able to go up and find his father. And his father is completely startled, like, what the hell are you doing here? Did you die? No, I didn't die. I'm up here visiting you. So there's this grand kind of symphony of different frequencies and different harmonies, and you can harmonize with different of these frequencies, and it all kind of goes together like remote viewing. Well, there's so much. I better not. I'm gonna go in a million directions at once. But more and more, I'm trying to understand and articulate how all these things are the same. And I think it's because consciousness is a field, just like electromagnetism is a field, just like gravity is a field. I think consciousness, and this is not, of course, original to me, not far from it, but I've latched onto that way of thinking, which is that nature is full of fields, and I don't think that consciousness creates the world like some people do. Idealists do. I might be obviously wrong, because lots smarter people than I think that consciousness is the base, the base reality, and everything else kind of stems from consciousness. But I think the consciousness field, which might be dark matter, the reason we can't find dark matter particles after all these billions of dollars and 35 years of searching for it with increasingly sophisticated instruments is because it's too high frequency. Our instruments are made for the frequencies that we encounter both daily and even at the frontiers of science. But I think the dark matter is so high frequency that it so far eludes our ability to know it. But we're made, if it's not dark matter per se, it's something that meets the same criteria as dark matter, very, very, very low density and interpenetrating or suffusing our world. Like in the room that you're in the room that I'm in, there's at least 50% mass of dark matter to mass of ordinary matter. And that's mass. So when you think of how much less dense dark matter is, because that's already been established, whatever it is, we know it's super, super low density. But there's enough of it to create as much mass, at least. It's like 5.5 times more mass in the universe at large than ordinary matter. But down on a planet in a solar system, the estimates are all over the place, but the most conservative one is 50-50. So if if even this super rarefied substance is the same mass, just think how many more particles there must be to equal the same mass, because we're not talking number of particles, we're talking about mass, like weight. And so I think that these two types of matter coexist in our world, but we don't directly know about the other type. We just know the ordinary matter. And I think that consciousness either is this other type, or the other type of matter is an expression of consciousness. But I think that consciousness is a field. That's why remote viewing isn't even really remote at all. That's a misnomer. We can remote viewers who are super gifted can be given a 6-digit number, and that number will refer to something that they're blind to initially, but the researchers know what it is, and it might be, say, like an office in China, and you're supposed to look and see what books are on the shelf, and remote viewers who have been trained and are among the cream of the crop can look at this number itself. That's all they need. No information beyond this 6-digit number. And it will plug them in. It will attune them. They don't have to travel to China. There's so many different frequencies. One of them, there's like an infinite number of frequencies. One of them is that bookshelf in China, and they can tune to it. How they do it, I have no idea, except for the fact that our individual consciousnesses are coextensive with, are contiguous with, or contiguous implies a boundary. It's not even a boundary. It's absolute identity with the fundamental consciousness field that goes all over the place. Ingo Swann was able to see the rings around not Saturn but Jupiter before anyone knew that there were rings around Jupiter. And then several years later, these probes went and they photographed for the first time these very subtle rings around Jupiter, thus confirming Ingo Swann's remote viewing session where he said, yeah, they're there. And scientists said, no, they're not. So too bad for you, Ingo Swann. Well, he had the last laugh on that one. So I just think that all information is accessible. It's right here in front of us. Any remote viewing task that you could set is actually nowhere else but right here. And that's bizarre to think about.
Kind of, for those familiar with like the Akashic Record, is
Yeah,
this
yeah.
massive database that's accessible of all the knowledge in the world. That to me is kind of like what you're describing. This dark matter, or whatever's there is basically the sum of all human knowledge that's accessible from any point in the entire world, and you just have to know what record that you want to pull off the shelf and look at.
Well, you have to know, and you have to be able to attune to it. It's an attunement rather than any kind of search. It's not like a computer where you enter a search word. It's sort of like that. It's an attunement. It's not any process other than getting on the same level. And when I said that frequencies are infinite, that's literally true. I looked it up, and even within our ordinary world of electromagnetic frequencies, between any 2 points on the radio dial, you can infinitely divide that up and have more and more and more frequency. And the higher the vibration level, the more information can be contained in it, because the amplitude, what do you call the up and down parts? The waves are more compressed. Radio waves are long periodicity, and the higher you go up to gamma rays, and then beyond up into these realms we're talking about, the more packed in with information these waves are. And so the Akashic Record, or whatever, there's many names for it, whatever you want to call it, is not just all human knowledge, but all information per se. That's why he could see the rings of Saturn. I mean, it's all information, and it's just so mind-boggling, and it's going to take me much longer than this lifetime. Luckily, I've got more to try to come to some sort of better comprehension of this, because it's so out there. But this is the way I'm thinking, and this is what I tried to I tried to apply in my book, UAPs in the Afterlife. I wonder if you have the cover. Oh, look at that.
We're
Yeah,
in tune there. You see that?
It's an attunement. Man, we just proved our point. Yeah, so in here, I have 6 chapters and a whole bunch of appendices where I try to pack in as much information from other authors, other thinkers, and my own little explorations on my sort of hypothesizing about how to bring these things together. Like, for instance, you know the hitchhiker effect?
Mm-hmm.
When people go, for example, to Skinwalker Ranch, and they have all sorts of paranormal experiences. They see orbs, they see figures, they see, of course, UAPs and balls of light, and then they'll go back to their house, their home, 2,000 miles away, and suddenly stuff will happen back there and then at their house after they go back. They'll suddenly see orbs. They'll suddenly see like a dog man in the yard, which happened to somebody who I think it's Lasaki, one of the people who wrote the Pentagon. Skinwalkers at the Pentagon. Thank you. Thanks for the assist. You bailed me out. He went back home and all kinds of shit happened. Like his son saw a dog man in the backyard, and his wife was horrified by these menacing orbs of light in her bedroom. Lots of other stuff happened. Footsteps where nobody was supposed to be in the attic, and all sorts of stuff. And I think it's because of the phenomenon of resonance. When an opera singer is able to break a wine glass with her voice, and some people think that's just an urban legend or something, but it's not. You can do it. You can see it on YouTube. People do it. Not just opera singers, but you can train yourself.
Mythbusters proved it, so it's real.
They disproved it?
No, they proved it. Yeah.
Oh, they proved it was real good.
Mythbusters proved that you can break wine glasses with a voice.
It has to be real. Yeah, you can write that down. You can mark it down. Yeah, people on YouTube, it's fascinating. They'll put like a straw in the glass so that when the straw begins to bounce around, they know that they're getting close to the exact natural frequency of the glass crystal.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you match it, what you're doing is adding energy to the system. That's why the glass breaks. It doesn't just, you would think, if you didn't know about this, you'd think that if you match it, it would just kind of buzz or vibrate at the same exact level. But in fact, it breaks because when there's resonance, there's added energy. I don't know more than that. I just know it adds energy to the system. So when you go to Skinwalker Ranch and you are visited by or beset by these high frequency, this expanded frequency of experience, let's say, an expanded bandwidth from your normal, it adds to your kind of natural frequency. You then have a wider, your spirit, not your body. I think that your whether it's dark matter or whatever, the consciousness in you then has a wider receptivity to different levels of vibration that aren't ordinary. And so you go back home and you still have this widened capacity to experience and to sort of welcome, even perhaps like a magnet, these non-ordinary entities, conscious entities, that exist normally just outside of our perception at a higher frequency. And maybe some of them are lower frequency, like there's some like elementals that are talked about where they might be lower frequency than us. And then like perhaps Sasquatch is, even though that's debatable because they can also apparently go high, disappear.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, gosh, this is why.
So are you saying that, do you think that the hitchhiker effect isn't so much something following them home, but the ability to see things has been opened up?
I think mostly the latter, but I think things can follow you. That's because they don't even have to follow you, because as I said before, everything is right here. there's no distance is an illusion, just like time is an illusion. The office in China is both 7,000 miles away and right here in front of me. So I think that ghosts are non-local. They can decide to attach themselves to a place, as you know very well from your long ghost hunting experience. They can prefer a place or have an emotional tie to a place. But I think they can also, in the blink of an eye, if they intend to, all it is intention. They can be somewhere that we would consider elsewhere, but it's all part of the same. It's just a matter of frequency, not distance. That's why the phenomenon of entanglement is sort of a fundamental phenomenon. It shows us that distance is illusory. Like two particles can be entangled together at 25,000 light years apart. And I recommend a book that I'm just reading now called The One by Heinrich Pass, P-A-S, with a thing over the A. And he's talking about the ancient philosophical concept of the oneness of the universe and how that can answer a lot of the limitations of modern physics. And it's a great book. And he talks about entanglement, which most of our viewers will understand basically. Like, I'm no physicist, but I understand that it's not like one, you create two photons, for instance, and you have them interacting with each other, then you separate them by any amount of distance. And if the spin of one, or say an electron, because that has spin, if the spin of one is an upspin, then you know that the spin of the other is a downspin, not because there's any communication between the two, but because they're two sides of the same coin. They're really one object, no matter how far apart they are. So you can infer the state of one by looking at the other, and vice versa. They continue to be one object if they were ever one in the beginning by being born together. And Heinrich Pass in this book is making the argument that this is sort of a subset of an overarching fundamental oneness of the entire universe, and that must be the case if consciousness is a unified field that the rings of Jupiter are right here, just like other places in the Earth and in the universe are right here if we get attuned to it. Oh shoot, I lost my train. What did I just say? What was the sentence before that last sentence? Can you remember?
If their quantum entanglement was what we're talking about, I can't.
The overarching.
Yep.
And it's the unity. Oh, that's right. Thank you. Bailing me out time and time again. So not only is consciousness this unified field that is both extensive in apparent space and all one, both at the same time. But all matter in the universe is also fields. And this is the thing that physicists for the last, I think, 100 years have increasingly been on board with, which is that particles are an epiphenomenon. They're a secondary phenomenon. What it is these fields, they're called quantum fields. And every elementary particle, and there are about 17 of them, every elementary particle, like a proton, an electron, a photon, all the quarks, each of them is part of a field that stretches throughout the universe, and any one particle is an excitation of this underlying field of potential. It's like a pure potential field, these quantum fields, and the particles come into existence and fade out of existence based on energy. If there's enough energy at any one point, this excitation becomes a bundle of energy, and it manifests as a particle. But the particles are not the basic building blocks of the universe or of matter or of reality. These fields are, and I think the consciousness field is the 18th of these. I think that it, as I said, I don't think that it creates everything. I think it plays a leading role. it plays a leading role in that it can affect the other fields, like psychokinesis. Like some people can levitate objects. Some people can levitate themselves. There's a great book by Carlos Eire, E-I-R-E, called They Flew, which just came out a few months ago from Yale University Press, no less. And it's about these saints. Infinite documentation at the time by hundreds of eyewitnesses, and about these saints who, when they're in a condition of high ecstasy, a religious ecstasy, they sometimes would fly. Teresa of Avalon would not fly, but raise up, feet off the earth. And this again is like a rarefication. You become, I think that the ratio of this either dark matter or something very like dark matter, this super rarefied matter, the ratio of it to our heavy matter becomes enough so that at a certain point we're lighter than the ordinary air around us. I think it's a ratio question, a proportion question. Sorry, that's the end of my paragraph.
Right. We gotta take a real quick break here for station identification, and we will do that and let you catch your thought there, and we'll be right back.
Hangar One Publishing, books that explore the unknown.
They're after my story.
Legends leap off the pages of our books.
You think you're the only one? They're under my tail too.
From UFOs to cryptids, Bigfoot and beyond.
Who's behind all this?
Hangar One Publishing, where every legend is revealed.
It's Hangar One Publishing. They're unraveling all of our mysteries.
Dive in, real videos, sights and sounds with our immersive book technology.
I guess our secrets are out now.
But in the best possible way.
From Bigfoot tracks to galactic trails, we cover it all.
We should get out of here before it's too late.
You're right, let's plan.
Escaping reality? Dive into ours. Hangar One Publishing, revealing the universe's best-kept secrets, one book at a time.
I don't know about you, Chris, but I really want to boot that alien across a football field. He just drives me nuts every time.
It must be pretty annoying for you to see it over and over. I've only seen it twice, so it's still funny and fun for me. Can you share the screen and
go ahead?
Can you there's a video of mine on YouTube that contains copyrighted music, but if we turn off the volume, it'll show some levitation that could be interesting for us.
Sure.
I don't know if you can share your screen from YouTube or not.
Yeah, sure.
It's called. It's in on my channel, Impossible Visits, and it's called Anti-Gravity Without Technology.
Sure. Let me go take a look. So while we're doing that, so you were kind of talking about like the quantum entanglement and stuff like that, and that's really interesting because I just want to say that I've read your book and I've met you in person and stuff, and anybody listening, like, it sounds a lot of like you're trying to get so much information in here, and the book is really well written, and there's so much documentation and stuff in there. It's a really good book, and it's all science, and that's what's amazing is, we're talking about such weird phenomenon and stuff of, remote viewing and the Akashic field and all this stuff, dark matter and all this, crazy ideas in that, but it's all based in science there, and you can take a look at this, and it's really interesting. I find that, your quantum entanglement that you were talking about, where one object over here is being manipulated, and they find that, across, the country in another laboratory, the similar object that they've been testing reacts the same way. And that's just mind-boggling to think.
It's because they're actually not two different objects. They're aspects of one object, no matter how far it seems to us that they're separated. So are you?
I'm working on it. Keep talking.
Okay. Well, I have the next portion of my little rambling presentation here is that you know how the UAP research community has been for decades trying urgently to figure out, well, how are these craft? How do they do what they do? How do they, travel from 80,000 feet down to 50 feet within a second? How do they go from 0 to 200 to 20,000 miles instantaneously without, smearing the pilots with G-forces? And so what is the propulsion system? What can that be? And I think that we'll just put this on hold until we'll just put this on hold for a second. I'll just finish this thought. Well, there's okay. Well, so this is some people at a house I've been to. I've been to a seance at this place, and sometimes even in daylight. Usually it happens in darkness, but sometimes in daylight, the ratio of lighter than air matter and ordinary matter can rise up so high that the thing becomes lighter than air. And here's a guy in Argentina named Ariel Farias, and this is in a laboratory setting. And this is a philosopher, Stephen Browdy, and he vouches for this guy. He was there in Argentina. And this guy found at one point in his life that he's able to not levitate a table all the way, but like this. And he doesn't have sticky hands. There's no trick involved. He's done this. He did this for several years. And there's a peer-reviewed science paper about it that I can link people to in the comments if they want to read it. There's also a 30-minute YouTube video that this was taken from that shows many camera angles. Many, that you can see there's a camera underneath. There's all sorts of sensors around, and he's not levitating the whole thing, but he's making the table lighter than air, on one side. He's able to, as many people have been through history. He's part of a long tradition of table tipping, table levitation that physical mediums have been performing for hundreds of years, and he just happens to be a contemporary person who can do it. I think he's able to. You can play this audio now.
It's just video.
You want to go? Oh, okay. Well, anyway, you might as well stop because she's just talking. But so as I was saying, okay, so when we see something like that, or when an abductee or a contactee says that the little grays float through the air, nobody says, well, what is their propulsion system? It's because consciousness has the capacity to because it's matter, not nothingness, it's matter. It has the capacity to increase the ratio of lighter than air rarefied matter with the ordinary matter, and then things are no longer bound by gravity. And I think the same holds true of UFOs, UAPs. I think that the only reason they can, perform the 5 observables that Lou Elizondo has outlined, instantaneous changes of directions, instantaneous 0 to,
acceleration,
extreme velocities, and disappearing and reappearing and all those things like that, is because they're not just ordinary matter. They're a kind of matter that can go from low density into our frequency range, and then they can perform all these things just like mediums can perform levitations. Of course, a table going up like this a little bit, it seems a far cry from a football stadium-sized UFO over Phoenix in 1997. The Phoenix lights, but it's a difference in degree, not a difference in kind. It's the same. If you float a pencil 1 inch off the tabletop, that's essentially a proof of concept that you don't need a propulsion system. You need consciousness to to enact that. And I think that the aliens are a group mind, like a hive mind, and I think that they have the capacity to apply consciousness in this much more powerful, leveraged way than we can, because we're more individually applying consciousness. Those people that you saw on the front porch there's 5 people, and they combine to allow a table to become lighter than air. But I think that the hive mind of these other beings, who knows how many of them there are? There might just be like almost an infinite number of them, and they can, I think they can apply themselves. I think the fact that they're a hive mind is a force multiplier, and that they can therefore accomplish what we might be able to accomplish in small ways, they can accomplish in monumental ways, but it's essentially the same phenomenon. So I'm glad we played that you were able to show that at the same time. It's extremely modest that this guy in Argentina can make a table go tip like that. But again, like, if you can't explain that through conventional physics, and you can't explain how UFOs fly the way they do through conventional physics, and neither one of which seems to have any they don't give off any heat. There's no traditional form of energy that's being used. Like when people take a thermal, or the military has thermal footage of like the Go Fast video and the gimbal video, the Tic Tac. The Tic Tac is cold.
Mm-hmm.
Some UAPs show up hot, and some UAPs show up cold on thermal, and I think that's because they're a hybrid of this low density and high density matter. And I think the low density matter is cold compared to ours because it's so spread out. I think this is the very same reason that in seances it often becomes cold before phenomena occur. In haunted houses, there are cold rooms where the spirits tend to manifest themselves. I think that it's all about the ratio of this low density to high density matter, and I think the low density matter is perceived by us as lower temperature. Like, temperatures in haunted houses will plunge 10 degrees. And it's registered and verified on thermometer. It's not just a subjective sensation or impression. And people get symptoms in haunted houses you may have that are similar to altitude sickness, like a headache, pressure inside the head, nausea. And I think it's akin to being suddenly on top of a 10,000-15,000 foot mountain, where the air is much thinner because the ratio of this other kind of matter has surged into the situation and inspirited the space and made it feel different. And I think that coldness and temperature, as you saw in my book, I spent a long time on that as a sort of a connective tissue conceptually between these different kind of phenomena. And I certainly felt cold when, as a 17-year-old, I had a long series of interactions with a ghost with a friend of mine, and it would get piercingly, like it would pierce your bones. It would be so cold sometimes in there. And I think that was this ratio of matter. There's the two basic types of matter that are in play here. And I think that science has not so far developed a way to measure or even become aware of the fluctuating ratio, because they only are calibrated for the ordinary matter.
Well, let me ask you this. So the higher energy something has, the higher vibrational level, the hotter it gets. So when you're talking about this being a very high or a very low density, it would be cold, but you're on the other end of the spectrum. You're on a low frequency then.
I think that that it's not necessarily more energy, the higher frequency. I just think that it's a different frequency. And I think that when the super low density dark matter, or whatever it is that's like dark matter, increases its ratio in like a room, I think that it causes the ordinary matter particles to spread out, and that is analogous to being at the top of a mountain. I don't think there's more energy involved.
Well, the higher altitude that you go, the less oxygen is in the air. So
Right.
if you're inserting more dark matter into a room, you're going to have less air, which is going to give you that higher altitude, that same symptoms that you're talking about. Yeah.
Right. I think people become short of breath around ghosts. I think that they become cold, and they have this pressure differential, like in the sinuses, like when you fly in an airplane and you have this pressure stuff going on. I think it's because you still retain the pressure from when you were down on the earth inside these various sacs and chambers inside our skull. And then it takes a while for the pressure to equalize outside and inside. I think that happens in ghost. Have you ever experienced that in ghost hunting?
We call it like haunt hangover, after you go to a paranormal investigation, the next day you feel like, you kind of got a cold or you're drained a little bit. So you have that residual effect on there. Yeah.
Yeah. And a lot of people get sick right at the time, not just a hangover the next day. Maybe you guys haven't, but from my vast experience of watching 3 episodes of Ghost Hunters, I see that people get sick at the time. There you go. Yeah. And I mean, I didn't get sick in my experience when I was a kid, but I certainly did get cold. There's this thing called psychic breeze, where people will feel actual movement of air. And I think that's an indication of this changing ratio. I think that there's that there can be I think ghost hunters should bring barometers. Maybe you do, but or altimeters. I think that often the slamming of doors between rooms is an effect of a differentiation of pressure from one room to the next. Could be.
That's interesting.
Yeah. I'm trying to synthesize and unify this stuff.
This is a lot of very interesting stuff right here that we're getting into. Not that it all hasn't been, but this is where the paranormal research should be going. Instead of going, hey, can you make this light up? Hey, can you make a sound for me and stuff like that? Take these readings when the door slams. See if there's a change in the air pressure, in the density of the air and stuff. See how many people get sick when there's, that's the kind of stuff that's measurable, and the data that should be collected.
There's some statistics involved and hard evidence. Yeah. At the end of my book, at the very last appendix, I have suggested a few experiments to test what I call the MTR, which is matter type ratio, which is just what I've been talking about. These 2 matter types, the ordinary matter and this unknown matter that seems to be conditioning and influencing our experience when it comes to these psychic events or spiritual events or alien events. Now, I alluded earlier to the fact that, and I keep going alien, which is annoying when people do that with anything, with the fingers like that. But I think that everything that we see of these aliens in terms of morphology, how they are, how their bodies are, seems to be rooted in earthly zoology. I think that so often they are reptilian or insectoid. And what are the first 2 classes of creature, animal to evolve on Earth? Well, insects evolved 400 plus million years ago. And then reptiles started evolving about 320 million years ago. And they, for a long time, were the only 2 games in town in terms of zoology. And then things began to differentiate more and more. But I think that consciousness, as I said, is this field, and it incarnates. Obviously it incarnates in us. I think that it also incarnated in other life forms on Earth, including reptiles and insects. And I think that's why we still see them that way. I don't think that they would look like sort of variations of earthly life forms if they had evolved on a genuinely foreign context on another planet. I just don't think they would look so much like what we can recognize already. Like I think it just doesn't make sense to me. I mean, yes, there's convergent evolution, but I don't think that. I think that everything has a direct root in our own evolutionary journeys on this planet, and for that, I am fascinated by the mummies in Nazca.
Mm-hmm.
I think that they were initially dismissed by a lot of people because they look like ET. They look silly. But increasingly, there's 30, 40, 50, 60 now scientists, qualified scientists, who have done tomography and DNA and carbon-14 dating. And consistently, in 6 different laboratories, for instance, the carbon-14 has come back within the same range. And this is like, depending on the specimen, and now there are dozens of these specimens in Peru, depending on the one, it's either like 900 years old or several thousand years old. So if these were put together somehow through some sophisticated hoax, it was done way, way back. And they have metal implants that contain alloys that were not even discovered by our science until a couple hundred years ago. They contain osmium, which is an extremely rare element, very rare and expensive. And there's portions of this one breast implant on this one specimen that is osmium, I'm assuming that our viewers know what I'm talking about. These the end of 2016, these desiccated, dried out, preserved small figures resembling the Greys of abduction fame were found in this cave or cavern or tunnel system in Peru. And over the years, more and more of them have been brought forth for science, but it's complicated because they were found and presented by this huaquero, which is a tomb robber, and he has refused to to identify the location. But as somebody said on a podcast the other day, if you found a Rembrandt in a dumpster and it was able to be positively verified as a Rembrandt, you wouldn't really bother too much about how did it get in the dumpster. You've got this Rembrandt. So we have these bodies, and they are increasingly being studied in a more and more sophisticated manner, including now by this guy John McDowell, who's a top forensic anthropologist. He's in Colorado. I forget if he's exactly what his title is, but he's now taken on the charge of being like an American, shouldn't say American because it's all the Americas, but a United States sort of representative in the scientific effort to understand the nature of these bodies. And so far, everyone who's looked at them directly, immediately, not just through distant internet means, has declared that they seem to be, barring some kind of revelation that we can't see around the corner, they seem to be once living, fully authentic organic bodies. And they are like bizarre. Some of them have eggs inside their abdomens. Several of them have eggs, so they're more reptilian. There's one that was just recently discovered that they all have been given names. And the one recently discovered is Montserrat. And she seems to be a hybrid between a human being. Oh, I forgot to mention, they all have 3 fingers and 3 toes. But some of them are much more human, and some of them are much more insectile or insectoid, and some of them are more reptilian. But this one named Montserrat, she's about the size of a person, whereas the others are, a regular human being, an average human being, whereas the others are small, like Greys. They're 60 centimeters, which is like 2.5 feet. But this Montserrat, I mention her only because she doesn't have eggs in her abdomen. She has a fetus in her abdomen, a 3-fingered fetus that the tomography has been able to obtain clear images of, and it's about 12 inches long. And if it were on the human standard or like the human scale, it would be about a 4-month-old fetus in there. And it's surrounded by a complex capillary system, and some of the organs, they weren't mummified in the sense like in Egypt where the organs are taken out. Many of the organs are still in there, and they can the sort of shadowy remnants of them, including the brain, can be seen on tomography, which is like a very high level above an X-ray, kind of more like an MRI. So these things are fascinating, and who's gonna be able to fake 1,200 years ago a tiny boned, perfectly formed little fetus inside of a full grown female hybrid with 3 fingers and 3 toes? Anyway, I'm just flagging this for people out there who may have vaguely heard about it and heard that it was dismissed and it's just a sort of a, a hodgepodge of different animal bones and people are being fooled by it and everything. You just mark this space, save this space. They're increasingly going to be authenticated. And the idea there is that they're a whole spectrum of sort of hybridizations of otherwise recognizable, like earthly species that we know about. Many of them have no sternum, but they have like a breastbone, like a bird, or I think some reptiles have. The feet, these 3-toed feet, look like nothing as much as like velociraptors' feet. Mm-hmm. And so there's lots of it's sort of like a mosaic of different genomes in the phylogenetic kind of area of insect, reptile, and hominid. There's some DNA in there that matches chimpanzee. There's DNA that matches humans. There's DNA that matches there was another fascinating part of it. There's just so much information that it's kind of hard to keep it straight. But this hybridization and this kind of creating these creatures out of the raw materials of Earth, I think is what's been going on all along. And I think that's what it is. And I think that that's why the book I'm working on now is called Look No Further. Earth is the cradle of the alien menagerie. I could even show the cover, but it's not going to be out for another 6 months or so. So anyway, so that's my little spiel on my thinking about that. And I think that people who are abducted or who are in like telepathic touch with these aliens are told a lot of stories, like where we're from and all this kind of thing. I think that's not necessarily literally true. I think there's a lot of screen stories that are told to kind of throw us off the track, off the scent. I think that they many of them want what we have. I don't think they can, as I said before, I don't think they can transcend to whatever heaven is. And it's a very speculative notion. I can't back it up right now, but I think that's why they're constantly at us and pestering us. I think many of them are trying to like take humans and poke and prod to try to find what is it that we have that they don't have. Like call it the soul or however they think of the soul. I think that they take our genetic material, sperm and eggs, and create hybrids. I think they're trying to escape the trap that they find themselves in, which is, you could call it a sort of a bandwidth trap, where they exist in a certain band of frequencies. They can't go higher and they can't really go lower, which is why you don't see them living around here. They have to disappear. Once they come, they have to disappear again. Now, why would we have bodies of them then? I think that if they die while they're down here, I think then they stay put. But I think they can't. I don't think that their consciousnesses can exist down here. But again, that's very speculative. Oh boy, it was all over the place,
So,
wasn't it?
so much to take in there. So much.
But my,
I
my
have heard the theory though, the insectoids and stuff before, of the reason why they're insectoid in nature is because when they go into space or these other realms or travel, as you said with the low density and stuff, because insects have the ectoskeleton instead of the
yeah.
internal skeleton, and the insectoid versions, or why that is to protect them and keep them more solid, instead of being soft and squishy like we are. So that kind
So they
of
can it equips them to travel better,
hmm
different places and different pressures and stuff.
hmm
Yeah, it's interesting. None of the Nazca mummies, that's what they're called. I forgot to mention the Nazca mummies. None of them seems to have an exoskeleton. They all have these spinal cords. They have more what's that thing in your spinal cord? Those things, vertebrae.
yeah, that's on the
They
outside.
have more
Yeah,
vertebrae. They have 32 vertebrae, whereas we have, I think, 26. They have ribs that are just circular.
yeah.
There's no, as I said, no sternum. They're just a tube, and they're very simple structure. They're different in that way, but maybe they don't have to be. For instance, their hips don't have a ball and socket. They're just kind of connected to the pelvis. So, which might be because they can float around, as we've heard from thousands of eyewitnesses. They don't have to walk in the dense form that we do, on the planet. They can just sort of glide about. The kids in the Ariel school visitation, in Zimbabwe, they talked about these little men coming out and floating around, and so do thousands of other witnesses. So it's all very fascinating, but keep an eye on these Nazca mummies. They're going to be, it's sort of like, disclosure happening right in our backyard, but because it's happening in the Spanish-speaking world, it's not given the credence that it should by Western science or Northern science, and so that's why everybody's all excited about this guy John McDowell, the forensic expert from Colorado, because of course he's within our recognized sphere of authority, because he's an English speaker and an American. But there's all sorts of fully qualified scientists in Mexico and in Peru who have done a year's worth of work on these specimens. So I would recommend looking into it for anyone interested.
Yeah, definitely. There's so much, and I think it's partially because like when they first came out, they were declared a hoax, and then people just kind of wrote them off. And now
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about. There's been like scientific, there was a whole press conference out in California about that recently that just got washed over and nobody noticed. And
Well, it was a disaster technologically.
it totally was.
Yeah.
Was.
So that didn't help the cause any.
Yeah. So I mean, it's hard to tell. I mean, you said like these things are supposed to be so old and hard to hoax way back then and stuff, but I don't know. I don't know what to make of them. I want to think that
So
they're
it's good
real.
to keep an open mind both ways. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
that's true skepticism, whereas you're not prejudging. You're not prejudging anything.
Yeah,
that's good. But I've been convinced that they're real because I'm going to have a big long chapter about them in my book. So therefore, I'm convinced they're real.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I watched some of the Brazil stuff that they put out and that about them, and the MRI machines they put them through, and the scientists and the doctors and that stuff were looking at them, and there's some really convincing stuff. They could take and 3D map it, and they were looking at the whole internals, and I mean,
yeah,
it was cool stuff. So
yeah,
I don't know what to make of it.
Well, it's fascinating too, because we have all these governments who continue to stonewall this stuff decade after decade after decade, and then there you have this sort of humble or like uncredentialed tomb robber. It's just like, it's perfect for a movie. Indiana Jones has nothing on this. You have this sort of ordinary tomb robber in the middle of nowhere in Peru, comes up with what could end up breaking the logjam, or opening the floodgates, at the same time as world governments feel that they have the right and the responsibility to keep it from the poor, ordinary citizens of Earth who can't handle the truth, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So it's very frustrating, but very delightful to see that this might be the way that it's sort of like an end around, like in football, like an end around the establishment. And it's wonderful that it would happen in the developing world, you know, instead of these supposedly superior first world. You know, I would love us to be outgunned by this Huaquero named Mario.
Absolutely. We will all have to keep an eye on that and see what transpires. Hopefully it gets covered in more news and stuff and more people hear about it. But absolutely, you got yourself your new book here. You got another book you said coming out shortly. You're going to have to come back and tell us all about that as well. But where can people find you? Where can people get a hold of you? You got your website and YouTube and all that stuff. Tell everybody all about it.
Thank you. My YouTube channel is Impossible Visits, and the web page, it's a very simple web page, but it has all my good stuff, is thenearnessofyou.net. The near.
You froze. Well, there you go. The nearnessofyou.net. Christopher has frozen. You back now?
Yeah, I never felt frozen myself. My experience was entirely different.
You know what's interesting, and I've said this on the show before. Monsters on the Edge, my Monday show, has very little technical issues. The Paranormal Spectrum, where we talk about the weird, the bizarre, the ghosts and stuff, there's always technical issues on this show. And
Isn't that funny?
My guests are all high energy and mediums and just, you know, and nothing ever goes right on this show.
It could be like the resonance thing with the frequencies adding energy, and the system can't take it. StreamYard can't quite cope all the time.
StreamYard can't handle the show. It's too much for it.
You can handle the truth.
Awesome.
StreamYard.
Christopher, it's absolutely amazing having you on. I'm glad that we finally got together, you know, with two shows we had issues with, and now we're here. So thank you so much.
I apologize. Yeah, I'm sure thousands and thousands of people were on the edge of their seats a few weeks ago when I got sick. But now, finally, all this pure gold can be spread throughout the land. I'm joking, of course.
No, I want to make it very clear. There's so much information in your head, and I mean everything that you said, I understood like where you were going with it, and I just feel like, you know, whenever you do a podcast, there's so much that you want to get out and tell, and your book does an amazing job doing it. So I don't want people to think that, you know, this whole
my book is as scatterbrained as I am
and stuff. The book is amazing. It breaks it down. It has documented, you know, remote viewing stories and evidence and case files and stuff of all the stuff that we've talked about. And it really does a good job explaining it. So I highly recommend it for anybody. And all of your books are amazing. We've got copies of it from the last convention you were at and stuff. And just an amazing work, amazing body of work.
Thank you, sir. Let me leave you and everybody in our audience with a very, very short quote by Alan Watts. It goes, "Imagine going through a gate in a wall. Here is this great barrier. You walk through it, you turn around, and the wall and the gate have both disappeared. And you see you were always here." I like that.
I like that.
We like that. Okay.
You like that. Yes.
It's likable. All right. All right, man. I appreciate it.
Yep.
Have a
Thank
good
you
dinner.
so much for your time.
You're
have
welcome.
A good night. Take care. I'll talk to you again soon.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye. All right, guys, that is our show for this week, guys. Coming up, if you enjoy this, you want some more, coming up on Monday, Monsters on the Edge, noon Central Time. My guest is going to be Jennifer, I think it's Stokel, if I'm saying that right. She is from the Dire Wolf project, and she's going to be talking about all things dire wolf and dogman werewolfy stuff. So that is going to be an amazing episode. I can't wait to have her on and chat all things Dogman and Creature Wise. And now coming up next week right here on the Paranormal Spectrum, Thursdays at 10 a.m., we have Jeremy from the Infinite Rabbit Holes podcast is going to be joining us to talk about rabbit holes and all kinds of weird things there. So if you guys want to check that out, come on back here next Thursday right here on the Untold Radio Network. And until then, guys, remember, we are all part of the Paranormal Spectrum. See you later. Take care.
You seem to know something